So, everybody always talks about how amazing it was to see Princess Catherine's teen and young adult scandals be swept up under the rug the moment she became engaged to Prince William. But honey, I'm here to tell you, Princess Catherine's dirt is nothing but a tiny speck when it comes to the history of pre-princess scandals. As a matter of fact, there was one princess who passed away the same year that Catherine was born, and this princess had so many scandals swept under the rug that honey, it took a broom, it took a vacuum, and a chimney sweeper just to get the job done. This princess's name was Grace Kelly, and before Grace held the title of princess, she held the title of the actress with the highest drive in Hollywood. So this is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and let's get to this scandalous, messy tea right after this disclaimer.
Everything in this video is alleged. It is gossip, tea, and scandal that I get from everywhere. Make sure you guys do your own research. Let's get to it.
Grace Patricia Kelly was born on November the 12th, 1929 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her mother's name was Margaret Major or Mayher, and her father's name was John B. Kelly Sr. And Grace's parents were loaded. Now, because they were so wealthy and affluent, many people just assumed that Grace's childhood was fantastic. But gossip on the streets claimed that even though Grace didn't want for anything, her father was a very hard to please and controlling man. And while her mother was not as controlling as her father, she was a very physical woman, meaning she would mink, mink, mink Grace and her siblings across the top of their heads several times a day. Now, because Grace grew up in this very controlling environment, after Grace graduated high school, she immediately started to rebel. You see, Grace wanted to get into acting, and her parents told her not to. As a matter of fact, her father told Grace that if she did go into acting, he would look at her as just one notch above a common streetwalker. But if he thought that this insult was going to stop Grace, he was mistaken. In 1948, when she was still just 18 years old, she enrolled in the New York School for Dramatic Art. And it was around this time that some of the first scandalous rumors about Grace Kelly started, because her instructor at this school was Dunn Richardson, a 30-year-old married man. And it was clear that Dunn would forget all about the fact that he was married when he would be up in Grace's face telling her how she was beautiful and that he knew that she was going to be a superstar celebrity soon. And I mean, while he did have a correct assessment of the situation, it is clear that the real reason he was throwing these compliments around was so Grace would be flattered and open up to his advances. And that is exactly what happened. Soon though, Dunn and Grace became entangled so deeply that he started planning to leave his wife. Matter of fact, it is alleged he went and drew up divorce papers behind his wife's back. And on the day that he did that, Grace was clearly thrilled because she told him that they should celebrate the night by going to eat at her parents' house. Basically, she was going to introduce Dunn as the new man she was dating. Well, Grace and Dunn did go to dinner to her parents' house, and rumor has it her father immediately took a disliking to this man. And because of this, when Dunn and Grace went for a walk in the outside garden, her father John went into Dunn's briefcase and he found the divorce papers that were drawn up that day. John Kelly was furious. He immediately came outside cursing and bumping Dunn Richardson, and he told him that he ought to be shamed being a married man and trying to court his daughter, and he threw him out the house. And Grace didn't leave with Dunn Richardson, but baby, I know she wished she did, because her father gave her the talking to of a lifetime. He basically told her she was stupid and, of low quality to make herself a side chick to a married man. He went on to say how embarrassed he was to be a father of a girl with such loose morals. But honey, I wish I was there at the time, because I would have told John Kelly, sir, if this embarrasses you, you may as well buckle up, because your daughter over there, honey, she just getting started. Because after this episode, not only did Grace continue seeing Dunn Richardson, she also added another man to the mix, and this was 40-year-old Claudius Charles Philippe. And Grace Kelly messing with Dunn Richardson may have been about her liking him or thinking he was cute or something like that. But when it came to Claudius, baby, ain't no question that man was paying for it. You see, Claudius Philippe was the owner of the banquet hall located inside of the Waldorf Astoria. And rumor has it he had a reputation amongst all of the up-and-coming wannabe starlets as a man who would keep you well provided for if you kept him well provided for. But to move on with the story, like I said before, Grace was now sleeping with Dunn Richardson as well as Claudius Philippe. And over time, Dunn Richardson, who had no idea Grace was playing him dirty, went ahead with divorcing his wife and started making plans to marry Grace. But soon enough, the truth about Grace's dirty dog ways would be revealed. Let me tell you how. So the year is 1950. Grace Kelly is juggling her two men, and I guess she loves this juggling so much, honey, she wanted to add something extra to the mix. Especially when the something extra was not only married to an actress that Grace was allegedly jealous of, he was also a prince. And yes, I am talking about Rita Hayworth's husband, Prince Ali Khan. Rumor has it that around 1950 or 1951, Prince Ali Khan met Hollywood's newest beauty, Grace, at a charity function. He asked his security to secretly pass Grace Kelly a note, asking Grace if she was available for the night. And once Grace told the security that she was available, baby Prince Ali Khan not only hid it, but allegedly hid it wrong. Now in the morning, Prince Ali Khan left, but not before leaving a small jewelry box on his pillow. And when Grace woke up and she opened the jewelry box, she was thrilled to see a sparkling diamond bracelet, and she immediately put it on her wrist. But if Grace only knew what that bracelet meant, she probably wouldn't have been so quick to put it on, because the truth of the matter was the only thing that sparkling rope meant was that Prince Ali Khan knew the smell of her twang. And I'm not playing. You see, Prince Ali Khan was a playboy, and he liked to use the same shiny bracelet to mark his territory or his ladies when he got another notch on his belt. And so if you find time to research that, you'll notice that there are several actresses with the same exact bracelet, and every single one of them came from Prince Ali Khan. But like I was saying, Grace must have not known about this. But her longest term lover, Dunn Richardson, did know about this. So when he came to Grace's apartment later on that evening, and while they were having relations, noticed the sparkling charm on her wrist, he went soft as a feather, baby. The folks say he was so upset he could barely get any words out, but what he could do was charge over to Grace, grab her wrist, and rip the bracelet off and throw it into the fish tank. And after doing that, he found his voice and he asked Grace, "Where did you get that bracelet?" Honey said Grace didn't say a word. She looked at him and sat up there and folded her arms. And so Dunn Richardson asked again, this time yelling, "Where the F did you get that bracelet, Grace?" This Grace. So Dunn Richardson finally had enough of her crap. So he basically was like, I can't believe I wanted to marry you. And he started walking out of the door. Baby said when he turned around, all he saw was Grace rolling her eyes, walking over to the fish tank, getting her bracelet out and putting it back on her wrist. Now, after Grace's affair with Dunn Richardson was over, she allegedly kept on sleeping with Prince Ali Khan here and there. It was an every blue moon thing, kind of whenever he was in town. But her affair with Claudius Philippe ended around the same time she stopped messing with Dunn Richardson. And it seems like the reason Grace was kind of cleaning house is because she had now starred in her first feature film and was considered a star. And it was time to replace these no-name men with big-time Hollywood heavyweights, with one of the first ones allegedly being actor Gary Cooper. And actually, Gary was her co-star in her first movie, High Noon. And around this time, he was 51 years old and married, and Grace was around 20 to 21 years old. And according to the story, Grace easily hooked her claws into Gary Cooper because she behaved as though, she didn't know her way around a movie set. "Mr. Cooper, can you help me with my line? lines. I'm so nervous, so scared I'm gonna mess up. But I'm trying to figure out what line in that movie called for a bunch of moaning and groaning and don't stop, because the folks say that that's all they heard when Gary and Grace went into his trailer to work on her lines. Matter of fact, Gary Cooper was getting it so good, he was one of the first ones who put Grace Kelly's reputation on the line. Gossip claims one night he was at a Hollywood party and he overheard some of the other male actors talking about Grace. Man, I tell you what, that new Grace Kelly, buddy, isn't she a dame? Oh boy, I can't wait to do a movie with her. Then he overheard another actor say, man, I don't know what you're waiting for that for. Look at that dame. She's too uptight. Too good at two shoes. You ain't gonna never get none of that. Honey said Gary Cooper got this cocky smile spread across his face and started walking over to the boy. Said as soon as he got over there, here he go. Guys, calm down. Let me tell you something. You see, that dame Grace Kelly looks like a cold dish when it comes to a man. But I tell you boys, once you get her pants down, she just explodes. Ha ha ha. Just couldn't help himself, honey. He had to let the boys know that he had hit that. And while he was laughing and slapping hands with all of the other actors, some of those actors were keeping a mental note on how they could be next. As a matter of fact, one of the high-fivers was said to be actor William Holden. And when him and Grace Kelly were cast in a movie together, he was next. And even though William was another one who was married, just like the other guys, he simply didn't care. And to move on, while Grace was still messing around with William Holden, she started a serious relationship with the designer Oleg Cassini. And Oleg was kind of weird because he never noticed that his woman was sneaking off to go sleep with actor William Holden, but as soon as she added another actor to the mix that she was cheating with, Oleg recognized that immediately, and this other actor was Bing Crosby. The story says that Bing and Grace started sleeping together on the set of their movie, The Country Girl. And Oleg confronted Grace about this right from the beginning, but she was able to convince him that he was making up things in his head, and so he believed his woman. And because he did, this left Grace the freedom to continue her three-man rotation. Remember, you had William Holden, you had Oleg Cassini, and now Bing Crosby. And soon, a fourth man was added to this rotation, and this was actor Clark Gable. Now, Clark was at least 28 years older than Grace Kelly at this time, but one good thing about him is he was between marriages at the time he and Grace Kelly were messing around. And Grace thought this was perfect because after messing around with Clark Gable for a while, she wanted to marry him. And y'all women come in close to the screen for this. Baby, the folks say that the reason Grace wanted to marry Clark Gable and was so tied up on him is because his schlong was working like a young man, girl. I mean, I really wonder what the man was putting down. But let's move on, honey, for y'all women get too hot up in here. Anyway, because Grace wanted to marry Clark Gable, she was set to cut off everybody else she was messing with, even her boyfriend, Oleg Cassini. But unfortunately for Grace, the way that she felt about Clark is not the way he felt about her. He thought she was young, pretty, and hot in the tail, and after that was it. He didn't want to marry her. And eventually he got serious with another lady and cut off his affair with Grace Kelly, leaving her heartbroken. But truthfully, Grace still could have gotten married if she really wanted to, because what Clark Gable didn't want to do, Bing Crosby did want to do. And so he was willing to leave his wife for her, and he was hoping that Grace would leave her boyfriend Oleg for him. However, right before Bing Crosby could put his plan into action, something happened that stopped him right in his tracks. You see, all throughout the year 1954, Bing and Grace were messing around with each other. So those plans that I was talking about Bing wanting to marry Grace and leave his wife for her, this all started around the year 1955. Well, also in the year 1955, Bing Crosby was nominated for an Oscar for the movie him and Grace starred in, Country Girl. And the whole week before the ceremony, Grace had rented a hotel room to be close to the event center, and Bing was there every day. And of course, during this time they spent together, Bing was telling Grace how nervous he was. You know, he was hoping that he would win the Oscar, and Grace was giving her lover moral support. Well, turns out Oscar night came and Bing did not win the Oscar. He was down and out, so instead of going home with his wife, he went back to Grace's hotel room. He went back to Grace's hotel room to get some comfort. Well, the folks say the man walked into the hotel room and saw Grace Kelly butt naked doing a reverse cowgirl on top of somebody else. And the somebody else was the actor who had beaten Bing Crosby for the Oscar, Marlon Brando. Bing Crosby was, of course, heartbroken, but Grace Kelly did not miss a beat. She immediately started messing around with actress Janet Leigh's husband, actor Tony Curtis. And by this time, I don't know if Grace's reputation of being kind of loose had gotten around the men of Hollywood, because it's alleged that Tony Curtis treated her like a slut bucket. Like he really just kind of hit it and kicked her out of his hotel room. And when he saw Grace at other functions after that, he ignored her. And honestly, Grace really should have took note of how Tony was treating her and made the connection that maybe he was treating her like this because of her behavior. Because very soon after this, a lot of talk did start to rise about Hollywood's most innocent looking diva. And where Grace had messed up is that she loved sleeping with married men. And so a lot of actors' wives who had heard of her behavior, they started becoming fearful of their husbands starring in a movie with Grace Kelly. Honey, it's alleged that some of these wives, especially the actors who had married up, they had blue blood wives who were blood kin to a lot of these studio heads and bosses of the studios. These women would pick up the phone and they would call these studio heads that were their cousins and nephews and stuff like that. They would call these people and tell them, hey, I don't want my husband starring in a movie with Grace Kelly because she sleeps with her co-star. And so Grace was becoming a burden on the studios. They can't use her for the movies with the actors that they want to place her with. Then what are they going to do with her? And another way that she became a burden on the studio was because of the media. Honey, there were plenty of stories that the tabloid investigators had already picked up about Grace Kelly. And so in order to stop these tabloid magazine and newspapers from printing out these stories about their star, the studio would have to pay out a lot of money to keep these stories quiet. And so with these wives complaining and these tabloid media payouts, baby, the studio heads were getting right tired with Miss Grace Kelly. But either Grace didn't notice this or she didn't think it was a big deal because she kept her train right on rolling. Allegedly, she started messing around with actor Cary Grant. But their affair didn't last long because soon it was found out that Cary Grant liked to bet for the other team. But Grace didn't mind because she was already on to the next one, actor Gregory Peck. And y'all already know, I'm not one to be judgmental. I'm not. People can do whatever the heck they want. But one thing that I've noticed over the years that I personally don't care for is that people give Grace the grace that they don't give other women. Like when it comes to Grace Kelly, anytime you read something about her or research something about her, the first thing people say is that, yes, there are a lot of rumors about Grace's lovers, but people have to understand Grace fell in love very easily. She never slept with anyone unless she was in love with them. So they'll say that about Grace, but when it comes to other women, they'll just straight up call them a whore. But here's my thing. Y'all say it's all about love with Grace Kelly, right? Well, baby, I want to put that notion to the test. Because if this next rumor is true, baby, love ain't had nothing to do with it. So this right here happened somewhere around 1954, 1955. JFK, who was a senator at this time, ended up injuring his back. Well, Jacqueline, who was still a new wife and still wanted to please her husband, came up with an idea to cheer her husband up while he was in the hospital. And her idea was for JFK's favorite actress to come and visit him. And obviously, JFK's favorite actress was Grace Kelly. So Jackie was the one who got in contact with Grace Kelly. And she told her, hey, my husband Jack, he's in the hospital, he's injured his back, and it would just mean so much to me, Miss Kelly, if you could come to the hospital and visit Jack. He loves you so much. And Grace told Jackie, I don't mind doing that, but I don't want all of the paparazzi. I don't want anybody to see me coming to the hospital. So Jackie said, oh, Miss Kelly, I totally understand. So what do you think about dressing up as a nurse? And Grace thought it was a great idea, so allegedly they dressed Grace Kelly up in a nurse's uniform and put a mask over her face, and they brought her into the hospital to see JFK. Well, allegedly, JFK was so pleased that he asked his wife Jackie could she leave the room for a while so he could really spend some time with the most beautiful lady on the movie screen. Jackie does what her husband asks, and the minute she steps out of the room, it is alleged that JFK asks Grace Kelly to come closer to the bed, pats her on the behind, and pulls up his gown. And honey, the folks say Grace Kelly's neck went to work. And so I don't know if the rumor is true or false, but I brought it up to say if it is true, clearly Grace Kelly did not have to be so in love in order to get things done. Now, as you can see with that rumor or that affair, Grace Kelly was treading on very thin ice when it came to her reputation. But for some people, they just don't stop until the ice completely breaks. And this next affair was the deepest and most serious affair of all, and it was also the affair that ruined Grace's acting career and switched her title from Hollywood homewrecker to the Princess of Monaco. And this affair I'm speaking of was the affair with actor Ray Milland. Now, this affair with Ray Milland started off just like Grace's other affairs. They starred in a movie together. And Ray Milland, just like the other men Grace dated, had been married. In fact, he had been married for 20 years to his wife Muriel. And because of this longevity, everybody looked at Ray and Muriel as one of those staple Hollywood couples. You know, when everybody else wouldn't even make it 5 years, these people had weathered the storm. People looked up to their marriage like couples gold. Now, speaking on Ray and Grace, at first he didn't know anything about Grace's background and all of the other actors she'd messed around with. But as he and Grace became more serious and he started to develop serious feelings for her and going back and talking to his friends about it, you know, they let him know, hey man, she kind of been passed around. But Ray Milland did not care. He was completely enthralled with Grace. And since he soon started thinking about leaving his wife for her, he became very sloppy. He and Grace Kelly would be spotted out at romantic dinners. They would take long car rides together. And of course, people who saw them started running back and talking about it. So it wasn't long before the information got back to Ray's wife, Muriel. Now, Muriel was devastated, but she was also smart. She didn't want to pop off too soon in case this wasn't really something serious, and also in case the rumors weren't true. And so she decided to get absolute proof before she made a move. So rumor has it, one night Ray was at home with Muriel and he was packing his suitcase, telling her that he had to fly out of town. You know, the new movie he was shooting, the set was located somewhere else and he had to travel. And Muriel just smiled and nodded with her husband like she always did. She even kissed him goodbye. But what Ray didn't know is that Muriel had her sister waiting outside in a secret car ready to follow Ray to the airport. And so Ray drives to the airport and he doesn't make any stops along the way. And Muriel's sister was just about to turn around and report the good news that Ray didn't make any stops and she didn't see any evidence of Grace Kelly. But something told her to park outside of the airport gate where the planes were and just watch Ray board the plane. And when she did, that is when she saw Grace Kelly run off of the plane and greet Ray Milland with a long hug and a passionate kiss. And she reported the news back to Muriel. But Muriel's sister wasn't the only one who had news to report. Turns out an assistant who worked for the studios had to drop off some information to Ray at the apartment he was renting while he was on location for the movie set. And when the assistant knocked on the door, Grace Kelly was the one to answer it. So immediately, this assistant went back to the studio boss and reported what he saw. And so now that the studio once again had word that Grace Kelly was messing with one of their leading men, this became the last straw. They no longer wanted to put up with her shenanigans, and not only that, they let the tabloid media roar. And honey, roar they did. Baby Grace Kelly woke up one day and almost every single tabloid magazine was calling her a slick back tramp. There were pictures and stories about her and Ray Milland, but not only that, the tabloid had reached back into the Grace Kelly vault, and all of those other stories of her and other actors that they had been paid off not to say anything about, baby, they started printing those stories too. And Grace Kelly was in an absolute panic. Her whole Hollywood image had been about being a wholesome, beautiful, good girl. And now that the public were reading that she was nothing but a side chick siren to all of these married men, Grace was just about pulling her hair out with worry. But throughout all of this chaos, Grace had one thing that she could appreciate, and that was the fact that Ray Milland was steady as a rock by her side. He told Grace, don't worry about the news. And he told her, don't worry that your acting career is over. Cause baby, I'm gonna give mine up too. I'm gonna divorce my wife. I've made enough money to take care of you. So we're gonna take that and we're going to go and live a happy, quiet life. And while Ray Milland probably felt like this could be the case, honestly, everything he was saying was pure fantasy. Because see, just because he had this idea didn't mean his wife Muriel had it. She wasn't finna just throw in the towel just clean cut like this. This was 20 years she had given up her life with this man. And so Muriel ended up fighting dirty. And don't ask me how she did this, but all I know is the woman called their banks. She called their property managers, possibly even got in touch with the people who held their stock. Anything that they could call theirs or their money, she had it all transferred into her name. After she did this, she called her husband while he was away, and she made sure not to let it be known that she knew anything about him and Grace. You know what I'm saying? She was still playing dumb, but she asked him to come home so they could talk. Well, Ray comes home and he calls himself laying it all on the line. I'm sorry, Muriel, darling, but I love Grace now, and I do intend to marry her. And Muriel is like, really? 20 years, huh? You just gonna throw it all away to be with this 23-year-old? That's what you're gonna do? Well, Muriel, I should hope you understand. Love is love, darling. And Muriel was like, yeah, that's right. I understand. Love is love. But sir, I hope you understand. If you leave me to get with her, both of y'all gonna be living under a bridge, cause I got everything. And Muriel started talking about the properties she transferred over to her name, the bank account, anything and everything that he could think about as money for them to live on. Muriel told him, I got it in my name. And them folks say 30 minutes later, Grace Kelly got that Harlem Nights phone call. Hello, Grace? Yeah, I'm never coming back again. I'm gonna stay with my wife. Bye. Baby, the folks say Grace Kelly was devastated. Not only had she lost her man, her dignity, but because her reputation was destroyed, she also had lost her acting career, and something had to be done about this. So Grace had to go crawling back to the very people that she had tried to prove herself to a few years before. And that was her parents, specifically her father. And in order to save Grace's reputation from further scandal, her father, his associates, and Grace went to work trying to find her a suitable husband. And it was while this searching was going on, Grace Kelly attended a party with Prince Rainier of Monaco in attendance. Grace immediately walked in front of him to catch his attention, and her plan worked. Prince Rainier asked someone to make the introductions, and he and Grace talked all night. When Grace reported this news back to her father, he thought that that was the perfect match. And so he and his associates got in contact with the royal palace staff of Monaco to try to see if they could set up this match, set up this engagement. Rumor has it that the royal staff got back to Grace's father and they told him that Prince Rainier was delighted with Grace and that the engagement could go forth after 2 requests. The first request was from the royal staff, and they wanted $2 million in dowry from Grace and her father. The second request was from Prince Rainier himself. And let's just be straight up. The man wanted to test out the TT, wanted to test out the plumbing to see if it was worthy of a royal ring. So gossip claims in late 1955, early 1956, Prince Rainier took a private plane and he was flown to Grace's house. Him and his entourage ate dinner with Grace and her family, and at some point during the festivities, Prince Rainier's assistant cleared his throat. Once he cleared his throat, Prince Rainier stood up from the table and approached Grace and asked her to take him to show him around the house, show him the garden. And Grace, who had already been coached on what was happening, stood up and took Prince Rainier straight to her room. And baby, she must have gave that man the time of his life. Baby, I'm talking about up and down, back and forth. Head must have been swinging from side to side. Child, she probably stood up and did a 2-step on that man, TT. Whatever she did pleased the man so much, he was ready to be engaged the next day. So very soon after that, they did become engaged, and the $2 million dowry was paid. And on April the 18th, 1956, Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier became married, making Grace the Princess of Monaco. Now, I don't know if this marriage was happy or not. Some people claim that Grace felt trapped and all of this good stuff. I don't know. I do know that the couple had 3 children, with one of those children, Princess Caroline, being about 3 times worse than her doggone mama, but that's a whole nother story. But they had those 3 children, and Grace seemed pretty happy. She settled down to pretty much live a life of luxury. The people of Monaco respected her and loved her as their princess, and she was said to also be a magnificent mother to her children all the way up until the day she died. And that date was on September the 14th, 1982. See, the day before, September the 13th, Grace was driving in a car with her daughter riding alongside her when she suddenly had a cerebral hemorrhage, bleeding from the brain. And so she crashed the car. And although she survived that initial crash, she passed on the next day in the hospital. And Grace Kelly was only 52 years old. All right, everybody, this is the end of the old Hollywood scandalous tale of Mrs. Grace Kelly. If you guys liked the video, please like the video. If you guys are new here, please subscribe. And I will be right back with another video soon. Love you guys. Bye.